The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.
And as we are approaching the end of today's The Checkpoints, I would like to highlight one business event this week that took place in Batumi, Georgia. We got the chance to interview Ken Zinger, who is the Managing Director and Chief Learning Officer at UC Berkeley Center of Entrepreneurship. How to start a startup is the main question that Zinger will try to answer and share with those interested in a crash course on how to build a successful startup. Here are some interesting insights from Zinger for The Checkpoints.
This whole program is, it's actually a shortened program. We typically do a 3-week, it's more than a boot camp. A boot camp is a week. So it's typically a 3-week, just a crash course on how to start a startup. So in this boot camp though, this shortened version, what we want to do is inspire students who are very ambitious, that have a desire to make change in the world, to give them the tools, the inspiration, the examples of others who have done this, right? And to give them enough of a framework to practice the art of starting a company, so that by the end of this week, they will have experienced many of the same things that an industry entrepreneur will have experienced: the frustration, the joys of coming up with an idea, being able to tell a story about why their idea is so important and why they need to dedicate their careers towards doing something like this. So the learning environment is very different. Your typical university course involves an instructor up front and students sitting there taking notes and listening, and maybe at home reading a bunch of books. When you are training entrepreneurs, you have to create an environment that's similar to what an entrepreneur would experience, which is not sitting in front with an instructor and taking notes. It's really about creating something. So we have created a workshop environment where our instructors are walking amongst the students, looking at the projects they're working on, and really they're learning by doing. That's really at the core of the educational model, is that there is no more of an authentic way of learning than to have made your own mistakes and to learn from those that you've made, rather than to read about someone else's mistakes in a textbook. This is just a teaser, right? This is a 1-week, kind of the best hits in the week, to try to get students to enjoy the process, to get a flavor of it. And then we'll have the full program this upcoming summer in 2023 back here in Batumi. And we do these kinds of programs around the world. So we've held them in Hong Kong, we've held them in Italy, in France, in Estonia, and currently we do it every summer in Porto, Portugal. I've been to Georgia a few times, and each time I learn something new, as you will when you go to a new country. And I teach in probably a couple dozen countries every year. I just got back from India, and before that we were in Denmark. So we do these kinds of programs in many different ecosystems, in many different cultural contexts, and so I get to see the diversity of how people solve problems, how people see problems. And entrepreneurship I consider to be a native activity in every culture. In every country that you go to, there are natural entrepreneurs. There's always someone finding a new way of doing something, creating some new business. There's just some places that are more famous for it because they're creating companies that seem to be more global, right? That more people around the world know. What I found about the Georgian culture here is that there is this hunger, this just pervasive hunger to do something, to create something. And there seems to be, at least with the young people that I've worked with here the last couple years, visiting and training startups and working with university students, there is this belief that they can do it, which is not normal. Not every country that you go to will you have such belief that they've got the ability to do big things. So I'm really inspired by that, because it's what's required to take the first step, is the belief that you can do it, right? And if that's already here, if the students here already believe they can do big things, it's much easier for us and much faster for us to be able to give them the additional skills and the additional tools that will help them become successful faster. What we do at Berkeley is we try to measure entire career trajectories. So we will have a certain percentage of students who will start a company while they're in school. And then we'll get quite a lot of students who have graduated, gone to work for Google or Facebook or some other company, and then within 3 or 4 years, they come back and they start something. And then of course, years down the road, since I've been teaching for some time, we get some who come back 10, 12 years later. They're ready at that point. So what we look at in trying to measure success, right, is that our job is not to be a factory to create startups. Our job is to cross-train young talent to have the abilities to start a company when the inspiration hits, so they can activate those skills, activate those tools when the next big idea comes to them. And that might not be right away in school. That might not even be a few years down the road. It might be later on, once they have accomplished many other things in their career. So we measure it in a longitudinal way, not an instant measurement of, oh, how many companies have incorporated from your program. And the other way we measure is to look at long-term career trajectories. And we found with our Berkeley students, there are many that will never be entrepreneurs. They go through the program and recognize, look, this was useful, I enjoyed it. There's certain things certainly were more enjoyable than others, but the amount of risk that it takes to start a company is something that's not for them. But they'll use those skills to climb the corporate ladder faster. They will become directors of companies in a few years rather than a decade. They will be accepted into business schools earlier in their careers. They will have taken on major leadership roles as young people rather than seasoned executives. They have a much faster rise, but they also have many more options. They have many more opportunities to explore different industries. They have many more job opportunities because of the kind of training they've gotten, because so many more companies are looking for innovators to hire. They're not looking for the next, person who's been trained just to work on computers, because computers are getting good at working on computers. At some point, these computers are going to make your typical tech job obsolete. And so a lot of these tech companies prefer to hire students who are very flexible in their mindset. They are immediately creating on behalf of the company, that they're bringing in leadership skills so that the company doesn't have to train them for that. They're already coming in with a lot of that as a base coat. So in some ways, what we're trying to do is make Georgian students more competitive globally by having some of these skills that many of the students in the Silicon Valley, at Berkeley, at Stanford, and even MIT, the training they're getting there, hopefully the Georgian students who get the training here will be able to leverage all the same learnings that we're seeing in the most competitive universities.
The Checkpoint is presented by GM Pharma, the first international multinational pharmaceutical company in Georgia. GM Pharma, to serve those who need it most.